we can refer back to this conversation. So just started recording. So the point is to see, are there some common themes and opportunities and challenges that you may be facing that the other peers could learn from and explore further. So that's the general purpose of this conversation. If you find today that the conversation is helpful, if you find that you would like to continue this discussion, then one of the last set of questions I'll ask all of you is, A, was it helpful? B, if so, what frequency would you like to meet at? And you can also say, not interested, we're good. And that's a perfectly good answer. And then, if we can think a little bit about, if we do end up deciding to meet, what are some topics that we may want to explore? So those are some of the questions I'm hoping that we can connect with. But with that, let me pause. Ron, let me start with you, sir. You get to sit in many different conversations in Herman, and I'm just curious, why are you interested in this conversation?
Well, again, I think the example was was it last Tuesday, whatever day it was, that we had the meeting that we had several of the cities involved with together. And the one thing that caught my attention was what Salem had. Let me throw this phone away. What Salem had going on. And I've already taken that to our superintendent. And what it was, for those of you who weren't on it, is that they were building houses to try and attract teachers and making it part of the attraction package, which is a big problem that the school district here locally has. And again, it was a very good suggestion. I'm going to kill the phone. Excuse me.
It's all good.
Okay, I'm on the line. Can I call you back later? All right, bye. Neighbor. Anyway, it wouldn't fail. It wouldn't ring all day until now, of course. That was a big help, and just the collaboration among the groups gives some ideas that we can hopefully share. So.
Great. And just so others get to know you a little bit, Ron, would you mind just sharing a little bit of your background? So Herman does not have, well, yeah, can you talk about your economic development, what's going on in Herman, and what's your role in the community?
Well, to give you a background on me, I grew up in Herman, and like most young people, moved away, went to college, and had a career. I worked for Citigroup for 27 years, retired from them, moved back to Herman when I was 54. I took a year off, and then I worked for the local bank here for 6 years, and I've been successfully retired for 5 years, which is my favorite job ever, the best boss I've ever had, and can't say enough good things about it. The reason we got interested in, of course, is that the schools and the community suffering from the lack of young people, for anything else. And so we started a group called Herman Regional Economic Development. It's a 501c6 that we have had for about 6 years. And quite honestly, we started out gung-ho, and then we floundered, and we still have an organization with a little bit of money, but it's not getting anywhere. So I'm hoping that when the GROW program came up, this would be an opportunity to move forward with the HRED project and to move Herman forward again and try and get some investment for families and businesses here. So that's my background.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. Matt, if you can hear us, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and then what's interesting you in this conversation?
Yeah, so I am the school superintendent. I grew up in Eldon, have been here. I'm 43, since you don't see a picture of me. I have 4 kids, 10 and all the way down to 2, and was an ag teacher. I build houses on the side. I have rental properties, and and run a few cows also. So jack of all trades, master of none. And I enjoy this group to just get ideas and to share ideas, because at the end of the day, we want our rural communities to get better. And so sometimes we're just on here for that one little nugget that we take away that makes a huge difference. And so just trying to share ideas to help each other out. So there you go.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Dwayne, thoughts from you, sir?
Certainly. I've been here, we grow Marshfield about a year and a half now. And I kind of stepped into a program that's been going on for, what was it going on? I mean, you were with Marshfield longer than I was there, Rishu. I'd say what?
2016. Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. And so they went through a whole process, and then they created the nonprofit back in 2017, and now this year we're about to get our federal non-tax exempt status in play. And while all this was getting set up, the community went through the community growth plan process. And that was adopted by all of the community entities, the city, the school district, the Chamber of Commerce, the Industrial Development League, as well as the local community foundation. So most of the community leaders have adopted this growth plan, and we're just now trying to position ourselves to implement it. As for me, I've been doing rural economic development for over 25 years in a couple different states across the South. And this is my latest gig here in Missouri. This is my fourth gig where I've started basically an organization from scratch. So.
And Dwayne, what are you hoping to get out of this conversation?
Well, like I said, I think we're moving forward right now, and I think the way Matt put it, if there's some little nuggets of ideas that we can implement that Marshfield can take advantage of while we're moving forward to achieve our economic development goals, that'd be great.
Hey, Rishu.
Thanks. Yep.
Hey, this is Danny. Hey, Dwayne mentioned that all the different entities in Marshfield had agreed upon the plan and moving forward. What all was briefly, what was in the plan?
Go ahead.
It's about 250 pages, and but most of it is, of course, appendixes and things like that. There's economic development, there's transportation, there's downtown, we have a main retail and commercial street called Spur Drive. That's a focus of the growth plan as well. From a pure economic development standpoint, there's 3 growth areas that the community is focusing on. One is there's a brand new interstate interchange that's under construction right now. We're supposed to have hopefully a grand opening coming up next month. That'll open up. So all the property around there will probably become pretty valuable for economic development purposes. We also have our existing industrial park that we're looking at doing an expansion. And then we're also looking at some other property along the interstate that's towards Springfield that we think we can develop. So if we can move on those, we'll improve the transportation, the utilities, the workforce, as well as the training programs that we have here. And hopefully that's going to lead to more folks, more housing, and just a better, some overall growth of the community.
And Danny, let me just clarify. I think it's important for me to clarify one very important point. So this 250-page plan was created by Dwayne. So the GROW program sort of prompted a set of activities that were really more like a half a dozen projects. One of those projects was to formalize an economic development program in the city of Marshfield. That project led to the creation of a formal entity, creating funding, Dwayne getting hired. Once Dwayne was there, he created the more detailed economic development strategy. That's a much more robust exercise that Grow currently does not tackle.
Yeah.
So Danny, you're up next, sir. Your thoughts. If you can introduce yourself and what interests you in the conversation and Carthage, that'd be very helpful.
Well, like Rishu mentioned, we're just now launching our the Grow program in Carthage. We're probably into it about 8 weeks or so, maybe 10 weeks. From an economic development standpoint, we have a fair amount of industrial base. We have large a Fortune 500 company, Leggett & Platt. We have a large ConAgra facility, Butterball. We have a large Schreiber's facility. We have several large size manufacturing entities. We've gone through different stages in economic development. We had a combination economic development chamber person as of late. The city decided to move forward and adopt or move a different direction. So right now we're in current economic development pursuit. And the Grow program is going to kind of help us define what that person needs to do and the profile of that person. And really, like everybody knows, it touches all bases. We are the size where we need to continue to grow, and we're going to be going backwards. Obviously, we want to keep the young kids around, create more jobs. So this is a real defining moment for us as far as, how do we move forward economic development wise, and what kind of things do we do? And then all the other parts of Grow and how it contributes to the economic development.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate that. And last and certainly not the least, Holly, your thoughts on Buffalo.
Sorry, I had to laugh. Everyone is like thrilled to be on Zoom meetings, right? So I look forward to being in the room together again one day. Like the faces,
no kidding.
just like, what's the app where you just smile, like the smile pops up? That's what Zoom. I feel like Zoom needs that. So yes, I am. It's an interesting mix. So Buffalo had a 501c3, or Dallas County did, and I was in Springfield working in the chamber there in public policy and economic development. And they applied for the first round that Marshfield received with Grow, and they were denied. But it led to this, we have this entity, what are we doing with it? We need to move forward. And we have some money, so let's hire someone and move the ball. So that's when I took on this role. My husband and I have lived in Dallas. He's a lifer. I will be a lifer. And so we have 4 kids, 6, 5, and twin boys, 2 years old. So I feel on the 2-year-old, the 2-year-old terrible tooth. Underneath this is all gray. So no, but the planning. So when I came, the city had not gone through a comprehensive plan since the 90s. Grow was kind of this wonderful fold in that we applied for then again, which we received. So the city went through a comprehensive plan. We went through this sort of like economic revival. We need to figure out how to move forward and get the key players involved and re-energized about working together to achieve those, goals. So we're 3 years into that comprehensive plan and board plan. So now it's like this re-energizing, re-engaging, realigning what those focuses are. And I have appreciated Grow so much because just connecting with Dwayne and others across the state is so invaluable. Economic development is like all of the above vocation. The mission creep just happens, and I think it happens a lot more in smaller communities. There's not an entity to take on certain things, so a lot of times we are turned to help in those fill those capacity areas. And so that's where grow, like capacity building. We're stronger together than we are separately, and looking at economic development not as an island, but as, you know, a region, working together across those partnerships, I've really appreciated and enjoyed. And then, you know, pivoting more on, and I talked to Rishu earlier about this too, you know, looking at what we do have. A lot of times we come to communities that talk about scarcity a lot, and pivoting on, you know, what assets do we have, that abundance mentality, and again, leveraging those assets. So that's certainly what I appreciate about getting to connect with other grow communities.
Thanks, Holly. Appreciate that. So, you know, a couple of themes that I'm hearing is connecting with other economic development leaders, hearing stories about what others are doing, sharing, building partnerships. So that's sort of the general theme of what we're trying to do here. And as Holly mentioned, I'm sure Dwayne will sort of share the similar sentiment, which is in rural communities, economic development, you know, everything, your job is everything. If a business can't get power, it's your issue. If they can't get broadband, it's your issue. If you can't find site expansion, it's your issue. So, and my sense is many of you do end up working in a fairly isolated space, and so my empathy and my support that I want to extend by us coming together. Maybe there are things that we can think about in a more collective fashion. So just to get the conversation moving a little bit, I want to throw out just 4 general ideas. Part of it is we want to learn, but part of it is we're trying to figure out where can grow be helpful. Is there a role? Is there something grow should be specifically focused on that can help you tackle an issue? And if we're thinking in a more collaborative, collective way, maybe through these collective efforts, our individual effort comes down. So I want to share 4 specific thoughts, and please feel free to react. You may like it, you may hate it, you may want to throw tomatoes at it, that's perfectly fine. And then as you're sharing your ideas, perhaps you can also share other ideas that you may have on how we could be collaborating. Are there specific areas where we could be collaborating? So here are the 4 potential ideas that we've been noodling on. And some of these are being tested in some of your communities already. So the first is this idea of an industry day. And Holly, I may just invite you to talk a little bit about, you know, what that is. It's a tough thing that you're trying, and maybe, you know, then we can talk about, you know, potential applicability of that kind of a model in other communities as well.
Sure. So one of the things, I mean, I think all of our communities, we had a boom, and I know some, at least in my community, there was an industry boom, and then, you know, that traditional manufacturing, and some of them left large mammoth buildings that are sort of the albatross of a community. And it doesn't seem like until that is filled, we have made it. You know, it just sits, and the owner, at least in my case, you know, there's challenges with realizing what it is that we have, how do you market it, upkeep, submitting it to leads, what the industry trends are now as far as needs. And so having those real conversations about, number one, what do we have as far as assets, and then how do we leverage them? And I know Dwayne deals with that all the time too. We get these leads, and a lot of times they're for, you know, a 50,000, 100,000 square foot building, and ceiling height, all of these things that, you know, I certainly don't have, but we have land. And so how do we talk through getting a certified site and working with a landowner to understand what that means. Or talking to your building owner that has one of the larger buildings in your community to market, but is unwilling or maybe doesn't understand what it means to market the building, or what kinds of industries might be suited, or they lease it to someone and they put, you know, a bunch of machine, they just use it for storage and it's dilapidated. So having these conversations, not only with the building owner, but bringing in the state, talking to your city council or your board and your community, and understanding what it is you have, and then how then can we pivot to leverage those buildings or sites to make our community be able to apply for leads, or, you know, business that wants to expand within your community, making that an attractive place to do so.
That's great, Holly. And you know, one point I would add that Holly had shared with us after they conduct. So basically, Holly has identified about half a dozen properties that have been sitting vacant in some cases, you know, over a decade, and everyone in the community has a perspective on what could and should be done with these properties. So part of what Holly did was she's been taking a group of leaders, the mayor, some of the business leaders, school leadership, and doing a walkthrough of the building so that people can see exactly what the building looks like, what kind of shape it's in, make a decision on whether this is a property that's still, is it an asset in the community or is it a liability in the community, and which properties are at that tipping point where unless something is done very quickly, you know, something that we can make some money on will end up costing us. So a profound learning that, Holly, I'm just using your words now, was these leaders all looking at a property and starting to come to grips with exactly what the situation is, versus everyone having sort of different perspective, which may or may not match the reality of the property. So again, a very sites related conversation. And you know, what Holly and the team in Buffalo is doing is sort of uniquely tailored to Buffalo. So each community can take its unique approach, but the goal still is to figure out, what properties, commercial sites, brownfields, you know, existing properties where there may be construction, or greenfields, farmland that we have, how do we package these properties and facilities and spaces to be relevant to potential businesses? And then what does that process look like of making these, converting them to being economically productive? So any thoughts and reactions to just that as one island? Think of this as the sites related conversation. Any reactions or questions?
I will add one more thing, is that we have really great state partners, and, you know, we have DED, we have the Missouri Partnership, and all of them kind of do their own unique thing. But pre-COVID, they absolutely were willing and wanted to be in your community and touring and at events and stuff. And so that was one resource, is bringing in DED, bringing in the Missouri Partnership to look at these facilities and give an honest reaction to them. And that's something that I couldn't, you know, I did, but you have to do it in a gentle way, because I still have to live here and work with these building and site owners. And so they can say some things that I don't necessarily should not be saying or in the position to do necessarily. And so, and there's also a little bit of the aspect of, you can't, you know, always the prophet in your own town kind of thing. It's I can say these things over and over again, but when they come from the Missouri Partnership or, you know, DED, that here's your top 3 things. Oh, well, he said it. These are the top 3 things. Yes, thank you. But it's reiterated by another party that, you know, can just go in and say, this is what you need, this is what you have, and here's some things to think about or work on. And so that is the added benefit as well, to bringing in some of these partners to then talk to your leaders and the owners of these buildings and sites.
Thanks, Holly. Any reactions, thoughts on the sites conversations? Do you have properties that are vacant, that are that you're trying to figure out how to get businesses moved into? Do those sites have a strategy already, or reactions, please?
Well, we worked with Missouri Partnership quite a bit, and we haven't had a whole lot of success with them yet, but a lot of it is because the buildings have been sitting idle for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, whatever. So we're still working with them, and they've been helpful, but we haven't been successful with it yet. So
yeah. But yeah, I think that's a pretty common experience. I'm curious, Matt, you guys have scored a major business manufacturing win recently. Can you, Matt, and you're not, you're a school superintendent, so you're moonlighting as an economic developer. Can you share your story on what was the process that enabled that attraction?
So we actually had a vacant building that the company Fasco Motors left us in 2008 for Mexico. And so we had been reaching out, probably just like what you guys do, to different businesses that were expanding or looking to expand. And luckily, 10 years later, they reached back out asking about the building. And so we showed them that building site, and it was horrible, run down, roof was not very good, and they decided not to go for that building. But we had 60 acres of a green space that we sold them on, and then we're able to work with a local farmer to get them another 100 acres, and just were able to get, it's Quaker windows. But I think, I don't know, one thing that, again, you've got to take with what you get. Like we're similar to Buffalo. Our salaries, our wages are probably not as high as what you are in Marshfield or maybe down in Carthage. So they were able to look to see what the pay was. And then, so we used that as our advantage. But one thing, Holly, that I was going to tell you, so that one of our empty buildings actually got sold to a company called Phoenix, who they specialize in just renting out industrial space. And so maybe even if you talk to one of your, and maybe you've already done that, to reach out to people who specialize in that, because that was one thing that helped us with our Fasco, or with our vacant building. They started fixing the roof, they fixed the parking lot, and they knew that was something they needed to do. And so actually, we don't have any vacant buildings right now because our buildings I know we got lucky. It's luck, but our other manufacturing plant was expanding. And so they went from a, 200,000 square feet to now renting another 200,000 square feet. And so it was a win-win for both of them. And right now I'm just scared to death of keeping a workforce, because you kind of promise a new company coming in that we can provide you with a workforce. And now you're just scared of oh man, I hope I can follow through with what I said we would do. So, so that's kind of our story.
Thanks, Matt. Dwayne, how about you? You've got a pretty in the press we saw you had a big win on a business attraction as well. Any incremental learnings that the others can benefit from?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we got fortunate with these two expansions we had, but one of the things that was, dropped in my lap when I got here was we had no product, and technically we still don't. We have like a 1965 building that the roof is falling in, so it's hasn't been occupied in 5-10 years. The owner's not interested in making any improvements, and he also thinks it's a beautiful building and doesn't understand why it's not getting market rate. And so we go back and forth on that. We have another one, Missouri Partnership sent out that lead for that 20,000 square foot building, and it was like, oh wow, man, I think a lot of us might have a 20. Well, it's got to be right next to a runway. So, okay, how many people have a 20,000 square foot building next to a runway? And it's like, so, anyway, that's one thing. But we're working with some property owners and trying to get some options in place. And we'll actually pay them a little bit of money to market their property. What that does, it gives us an opportunities that when we're dealing with a consultant or a site selector or a company, we've got at least got a not to exceed price. And, you know, been doing this long enough that the CREs out there and they don't like coming into, you know, any kind of area where if the property is owned by somebody, but they're willing to, you know, to entertain an offer, but they have no idea what it's going to be, you know, because then, you know, they could say, well, you know, I'm looking for about $15,000-$20,000 an acre, you know, and it's probably only worth 10 or 12 on the market. And if somebody comes and asks them, all of a sudden it's worth 50,000 an acre. And if I'm a company, you know, I wouldn't want to go through that either. So we're trying to play that mid role where we can hopefully get some type of real estate option in play that says it's not going to go any higher than this. And if you can negotiate something lower with the property owner, that's great because we all win. So that's what we're doing up here. We've got 2 good properties that we're hoping to get some options on. One's moving ahead really well. The other one, we've got a couple hiccups that we're trying to work through.
Thanks, Dwayne. So it seems like with sites.
So you don't try to buy the property.
Go ahead, Danny. Danny, you're muted just in case you're speaking.
I'm having a terrible connection. My connection is really bad for some reason. Can you hear me?
Yes. Danny, would you like to dial in? That may be easier if you want to call into the number.
Yeah, I'll try that. I got to go get my phone.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so it sounds like on the sites side of the equation, being prepared, working with the property owners, understanding what your inventory looks like, and then sounds like part of it is being creative when the business shows up to be able to help them understand the assets and why the business it makes sense for the business to be located in your business would be in your community would be helpful. So that's a conversation we'll continue to explore. The second, I want to switch to the second area now, which is one of the items we've been exploring is if we look at the current COVID crisis and the sort of outpouring of people from urban areas, and that we're hearing and we're seeing a lot of, Holly had shared an interesting data point on U-Haul rentals in Buffalo, where they have data now that shows that a lot more U-Haul rentals are coming into Buffalo than they're going out. So there's multiple data points that are showing that there's in-migration in rural. So part of the question we had was, we know it's difficult to attract businesses, manufacturing plants, et cetera, but what about attracting just jobs, jobs that can be conducted virtually? So, you know, the gig economy jobs. What would that look like? How could we be preparing our students, our local citizens to be prepared to take these jobs on? And obviously you need good broadband and some good infrastructure locally. Many of you have that. What could that look like? So one of the conversations we started with MSU and eFactory located in Springfield is, could we potentially partner with them? And so just an early conversation today, we're actually going to be, Grow is going to be one of the signatories on their grant application that's going to focus on IT training and cybersecurity training. So our hope is that we can, through MSU, help bring programming to some of our local communities. And those opportunities would then translate into internship opportunities with businesses, so people could continue living in your communities but have access to these really nice jobs. So that's an area that we're exploring. Let me pause and see if there's any reactions to that type of a concept and how maybe Grow can help explore that further.
Hey, so one thing at the school that I want to just mention as an idea, So our thought process with this was getting people to come back home, and getting a random person to make Eldon their home is very difficult. But getting our former alumni to come back home and to take care of their parents and to see their friends, we have had a lot of success with that. And so the school district has started publishing an alumni magazine that's like 40 pages, color, really nice. And our theme is really about come back home. And we always highlight 4, 5, 6 different people that have come back home, that are running businesses, that are working from home. And like, that's been our target market, is just how do you get people to want to come back home? And so it's been successful for us. And so that's just an idea. And so like, even when I give a talk to to the seniors that are graduating and leaving, I'm always about, hey, I want, you guys go to school, go do whatever, but we're trying to create the best community for you that you want to come back and call home. And so it's just that messaging, that branding of how do we get people to want to make Eldon their hometown. So that's one of our things. So I like your idea, but if I'm trying to get somebody from Springfield to make Eldon their home, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And then the other thing is, like, you don't even know the job that these people are doing. And you're sometimes amazed of like, holy cow, I didn't know you could do that job, but they're doing that in St. Louis and they just bring it here. So it's not necessarily creating new jobs. It's like, these people already have their jobs and they're like, we can just work from home. And so that's been our target.
How have we've talked about some of that. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just wondering, we've had challenges with the contact information. Like, how do we reach back out to some of those that are in the 35, range that have left? Yeah.
Yeah, so we really focus on our homecoming at school. So the football homecoming, and we make a big deal about class reunions. And so then I work with those, if it's your 10-year class reunion, your 20, your 25, then I make sure that I go to their parties. I give them tours of the school. I get their databases. I get their Facebook. And so then I created this big O alumni list, and then they just keep sharing it with me, and I share it, then, yeah. So that's kind of, so it's through the school, through the alumni. So we have a big Pocket Park alumni party downtown Eldon. We have a big, and it is the school spending money, but I'm always like, but we're getting good families to move back. We're getting college educated people to move back and make it their home. So I look at it as it's a good investment for our school district.
Good point. Very good idea.
Very cool. I was pulling up I was trying to find a link to what this looks like. Well, I can't find the exact document. I think I found something is this it, Matt? The Eldon Alumni Magazine? Is this what you're talking about? Oh, I think you're dialed in, so you may not be able to see it.
Maroon and gold?
Maroon and gold, correct, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very cool. That's great. That's, and obviously in each of our GROW communities, school districts are such an important part of the equation that this in some ways seems like it could be a low-hanging fruit. So thank you for sharing that. Any other questions or reactions to that concept of, some combination of working with alumni, working with training programs? Any thoughts there? Danny, I don't know if you caught all of that. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I heard all that. That's a great idea.
Hey, so one other thing I know I'm throwing out another idea that I also like is we have grabbed old yearbook photos and we've put them in our hallways kind of by the decades. So then when we do give tours, like the alumni, they love seeing pictures of themselves. And so I do it twofold because I just got an alumni to give us $25,000 for our after school program. But another thing is I like our kids to sometimes see their parents, their grandparents, and they kind of remember where they're from. And it's always like, hey, it's bigger than just today. You know, it's even what happened. I don't know. You're just trying to tell a story. So that's where we're trying to go with it.
You can see why we love what Matt does in Eldon. He's into everything. There's nothing that Matt's not thinking about. So, and Eldon is incredibly blessed to have Matt's leadership. Any other questions or reactions? So I'm so glad, Matt, that you're sharing these stories, because it's so much better when you share it versus me being the translator. And so if any of you are interested in any of these conversations or stories, I'll be sending out some notes and thoughts. So Matt, is it okay if people reach out to you if they had any follow-up questions on any of these items?
Yeah. And, you know, we're not that locked down in Eldon. And so if you would want a tour, I could give you some of our Maroon and Gold magazines. I could give you a tour of some of our schools just to give you an idea. Because like Buffalo, like you passed a new bond issue. And so like people will want to see that new building, but you're also going to want to say, hey, but look at our old building and look at our history and where we come from. And so when they start, like I'm telling you, pictures are worth 1,000 words. And when they see that, they just think that's the coolest thing. And so in our Maroon and Gold magazine, we also like highlight businesses of like, hey, look at this manufacturing, look at Quaker Windows, and they're hiring. And like when I send that out, like I get a ton of emails of like, hey, Matt, can you connect me with the HR person at Quaker, because I've got a degree in computer programming. And I'm like, yeah, let me forward your information on to them. And so sometimes we're just the connect the dots type people. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, you are awesome. And I feel like that's one of the beauties of Grow, is just to see, it energizes me to see other communities doing really wonderful things, and how do we copy them? And we have like a little bit of that. We've done videos. We have one of our business teachers, and she has done some videos of people that have like, what are they doing in their career? Like one is a state senator, and you can graduate from Buffalo and be a state senator and that kind of thing. But I feel like there's more to do, you know, that boomerang, bring it a little bit further. We're here, but there's, you know, more that can be done to tie it all together. So thanks for sharing that.
I'd like to, there's two more ideas, and we won't get into a whole lot of details, but maybe on the follow-up conversation, we can talk about it. One is around this platform we created called createhere.biz. And the idea was basically each community identifying their retail properties that are available for a business. To identify a property, you identify the needs you have in a community in terms of consumer services. It could be retail, it could be food, it could be entertainment. And then we would collectively market these stories to the region, to the alumni, to the region, and hopefully get people to look at how they can potentially create a startup in your community, or if they have a business in the neighboring town, they could expand to your community. And the goal is, can we slowly fill up all of our empty retail spots? You know, some of you don't have a lot of retail inventory, and that's great. So that's one idea that we want to certainly think about what that could look like in 2021. And then the last item is taking sort of a much more grassroots approach, which is an entrepreneurship type of an event in partnership with the high schools. And again, speaking with MSU and eFactory, they've got some really good programming already in place. And so what we were sort of evaluating was, is there an opportunity to maybe think about fall of 2021 as an opportunity when we have all of our Grow communities collaboratively go through a business competition, startup competition, where high school students and even local citizens can pitch ideas. The only catch would be, we would start by helping our local communities understand, here's the top 10, 20 needs we have in the community. We need these services, we need this type of support, we have this manufacturing plan, we can use this type of a vendor. So each community can identify, here's the types of services we want, and then see if that can prompt some good entrepreneurial activity. And so the beauty of a program like that would be that MSU and eFactory could become partners with us. They would provide the programming, they would provide the support, they could even hold some classes in complement to what you may be doing with your schools. So that was the other idea that we're trying to figure out. If we could set the bones of that program, could, collectively we come together and just really energize the idea of starting businesses, problem solving in the respective communities. So any reactions to those two ideas as potential areas where we go next in this collective discussion?
Yeah, when I left my last gig, they were working on a big project that I thought was quite creative, and that I didn't know if I was able to get. It's called Pathways to Possibilities, P2P, and just if anybody gets a chance, it's a region-wide. I've just sent it to everybody that if you get a chance. It's a region-wide approach where you get all the high school kids and young adults and stuff, and you create it's sort of a career fair. But this organization actually helps you do it in carrying this thing out, and it twofold. It teaches the young ones about entrepreneurship. It talks to them about different types of careers. It introduces them to things like eFactory. It also introduces them to the different companies that exist in your region, and it gives them a real good economic and career overview of how you can. I'm not a big fan of trying to keep young people, because I think when they're 18 or 20 years old, if they're deciding to leave, they're going to leave. They may come back, but I think you're talking to a brick wall. But I think just giving them that opportunity, especially when they're in high school, that there's a lot of opportunity right there in their region, goes a long way, and it's been pretty successful. And they have a pretty interesting model that, when I think about Grow taking the lead, and other organizations like SREP in Springfield and eFactory, creating that, a region-wide partnership to put an event like this on, would be really interesting.
Thanks, Dwayne. Yes, I've added that to the notes. That's great. So as we're wrapping up, I think we've got 5-6 minutes left. Can we have just each one of you just quickly comment, is this conversation helpful? And what's if yes, what's the frequency at which you'd like to meet? I think the options are, 4 to 8 weeks, 6 weeks, what seems right? And then we can work together to figure out what the agenda for these conversations looks like. We can pick specific stories. We can invite other speakers, but I'm just curious what you're thinking. So let's go in reverse order this time. Holly, why don't you start? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I appreciated this conversation and just hearing, again, what everyone is doing in their communities and how we can, help each other with ideas or leveraging, like different programs. I'm open to 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know frequency. I'm happy to do whatever makes sense if we're working towards a collective project, if that's more time or, but I'm open to certainly that suggestion, but I definitely would love to, reconvene.
Great. Dwayne, your thoughts, sir? You're muted. Go ahead.
No, I mean, we're communicating, coming up with ideas. It's great. Politics is local, but economic development is regional. And, I think our friends out in Salem and Eldon probably aren't going to be impacted like, Ollie and I are, who are, probably geographically a lot closer. But it doesn't mean that, we can't help each other from the challenges that we face as rural communities. I think on a regional basis, you probably want to interact a little bit more often. But when it comes to the others, I'm like Holly, I'm more than willing to, to get on a call and talk, and especially if we've got something to offer and somebody's got something, that they can share, whether 4 to 6 weeks, I don't know. We've got a lot going on here in Marshfield, and I'm more than willing to share, with our friends across the entire southern part of Missouri, if that's what it can do.
Great. Thanks, Dwayne. That's helpful. Matt, your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I like it. 6 weeks would be, I think, good.
Excellent. Ron?
Well, I think it's been real good. I've got 3 things I've written down I'm going to follow up with that. It's things that you guys have brought to mind, such as the Alumni Magazine. That's a source we haven't really tapped, as well as I wrote down the Pathways to Possibilities .org. I'm going to look at that a little more and see if there's something we can try and plagiarize. In this case, plagiarism is okay. And the last thing I came to the conclusion is that the city has a stake in this, and they need to get an economic director. So I'm going to go to the city council and say, hey, it's time you guys cough up some bucks. They supposedly have a tourism economic, but it's all tourism, not economic. So again, you guys brought that up to the top of the list for me. So it's good.
Cool.
And I'm thinking 4
Thanks,
to
Ron.
6 weeks.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks, Ron. I know you're the man behind the curtain in Herman. You make stuff happen.
And Ron,
Danny, bring it.
Can I make a real quick comment for Ron? While you're doing, economic development sometimes is a 15 to 20 year program with 2-year mayors. And so,
Right, you're right, exactly.
So you got to go in there and make sure that that they can get in it for the long haul as much as possible.
Yeah, good advice, and we've experienced that. To tell you the truth.
Yeah. All right, Danny, bring it home. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I'm with Ron. I got about 5 bullet points that we're going to roll into the next conversation we have with the team. And 6 to 8 weeks, I don't know if there's enough going on in our worlds, but have it every 4, 6, 8 weeks, and then have it just long enough to cover what's changed between then and now, and move on down the road. But it was good. Yeah, I appreciate the input.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your time. We'll capture the notes, and there's this event, we'll be recording these as well. So if you feel like, I invited a specific set of individuals on the call. If you feel like anyone else from your community needs to be engaged in this economic development discussion, please feel free to forward this invite to them. And then Marie, who's on the call, will help coordinate some of our upcoming sessions. So thank you, everyone. Nice to see everybody. Hope everyone has a good rest of the day, and we'll talk to you all soon. Take care.
Thank you, Rishu.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.